Alright guys, welcome back here, and what you are seeing here are the necessary child blueprints. So I got the Magnum ammunition already, and I spawned the revolver, and I spawned the pistol bullets, the pistol itself of course, combined herbal item, and also what we can craft. Basically we do have something to collect, so basically the green and the red herb. Pretty cool stuff, and I believe this is everything we need for this course. So we do have a bunch of things. I also want to add the key later, so we can also unlock a door from the inventory. That being said, we do need to know in what kind of slot, once we pick something up, what item type it is. We also going to need all the essential elements for that, and we need to spawn buttons, and we need to do stuff within the button widget. We already created the button widget. We also want to implement the hover function, so we want to have a nice blink. So we have a bunch of stuff to do, and I really hope I don't talk too much and I don't talk too many weird things at once. So of course I have to explain to you sometimes what I do, and you have to learn the reason why I'm doing that. But sometimes I really need to calm down a little bit, because we also need to get through. It's a lot of stuff, so probably I will just keep this project on my second monitor just in case, because it's a lot of logic. We do have to rebuild now, and I don't want to get lost, so it's going to be a long lecture, but I will just show you what I added so far. We can now pick up many different things. So for example, if I pick up this combined herb, you can see now that I do have this nice hover blink. You can set it up like how fast or like how strong you want to have the blink. This is completely up to you. I just want to have this settle blink. If this is just maybe a little bit too slow for you, or maybe not as defined or strong, yes, it's pretty simple to update this. So feel free to set it up on your own. I will just show you the logic behind that, how to build this property for each slot, and how to make it vanish after each slot hovering over that. And also what I implemented when I click the right mouse button, nothing is going to happen. I removed the BP pistol we have originally, and now I implemented a new BP pistol, basically, which is now part of our inventory system. So it's part of the master item, which is a child blueprint, like I said. But now the good stuff is that I can now suddenly right click here, and I can just hover over that. You also have this hover effect. It's not blinking, but you can switch basically buttons, and it's more obvious for you. You have this more dynamic and direct feel to this. And then I can just equip this and close the inventory, and my pistol has been equipped. And now I'm back, and everything is like it was before. Just one thing we have to update. Unfortunately, we have the 2 booleans has pistol, and we also have another boolean called can aim. So previously we didn't have an equip function. We just got the pistol, we just grabbed it automatically. But now we are using it from the inventory, like really old school stuff, and more Resident Evil like. This is what we want to have. The problem is I want to have all the logic inside the AC and not in my character blueprint for that, because now we are using the inventory. So what we have to do later, I will just show you everything in detail. We're gonna get rid of the has pistol and can aim boolean, and we are going to replace the 2 booleans with the exact same booleans, but laying it in our AC, in our active component. And then from there we just cast from the AC. Not really cast, we just use the AC. It's already implemented in our character BP, but then we can just use has pistol and can aim. We just need to replace all the stuff we already added for our aim camera stuff and the aim function. So this is what we really have to just replace. It's pretty simple, but yeah, we will do it together. But yeah, we have to do a lot of things. So first of all, what we need to do is, let me just open up my screenshot just in case if I don't forget anything. So first of all, what you need to do, we need to actually migrate things. So the first asset we need to migrate would be a pickup item, sound. So let's go to the sound effects, and let's just search for that actually, SC pickup. So this is the pickup sound cue, and it has all the 3 different sounds attached. So we can just get this one, and let's just migrate this. So let's go to asset actions, migrate. So we got all those sounds, and let's put this into our own project here. Like I said, content, and then just boom. Pretty simple stuff. Next thing we need would be the static mesh revolver, because you do have already the revolver. But now, just for myself, I added the static mesh revolver instead, because later when we equip the pistol, we need the static mesh, and our master blueprint, our master item, has the static mesh attached. So I don't really want to attach another static mesh or something. We just want to keep things clean. So this is why I really want to use also the static mesh revolver. So if you just go back, I need the whole folder. So let me just migrate the whole folder. So this is just because I didn't do it for my project. So let me go here to content again, and let me just migrate, yes, existing stuff. And then we're good to go. Next thing you should have, it's not mandatory for now, but when you go into the follow interior and you search for mesh, and let's search for key. You do have 3 keys here. A yellow one, which is for the attic, garage and basement key, and the kitchen and living room key. This is just what I created. Feel free to also migrate this, just in case later when we want to use a key to unlock a door. So we just get the asset actions, and then let's also just migrate those things. And of course, I need the textures and also the materials for that. So I will just put this also in my content folder. And this is basically it so far, what we need. I hope I didn't forget anything. And then I will now just save, and let's try to rebuild everything from scratch. So I see you on your current project. Okay, so here I am, we are back. And now let me just get rid of all those blueprints I have here, those actor blueprints. Let me open up the content drawer, and then we need to organize some things. So let me just search for the assets. I do have the keys, and material and everything is already applied. So if I just open this one, you can see now everything's applied here. Also, we do have the sound. Yeah, I have it here, 06 sound effects. I will just drag and drop this into my sound effects, 05. So just put everything inside here. And then I can just delete the folder sound effects I just migrated, delete. And then I have it here, inventory, pretty cool stuff. Cool stuff, yeah. And then what we also implemented was the revolver, right? So when we go to weapons, revolver, we do have the thumbnail for that. We do have the material for that. We do have also now the static mesh. And of course we do have all the textures, pretty cool stuff. We can also now delete the BEP pistol here in our 04 weapons folder. This is the pistol we picked up earlier. It's not part of our inventory, so we will just force delete. And yes, he's going to tell you we're not gonna have the animation notifier inside there. We just need to update our animation notifier. This just means that we cannot cast the sound or the muzzle flash. Okay, this is just something we will update later with our new mesh, basically. So we just force delete the BEP pistol. He's just telling us, hey, be careful, those things are not going to work anymore as expected. And then we will just delete this. The reason why he's also, of course, showing you the third-person blueprint connected to that is because we do have this equip function. So when we go to our event graph here, you see we do have the grab pistol or equip pistol, whatever you call it. So what I will just do is I will just get rid of this. It's just a component begin overlap. We are just we were casting to this BP, so this is not a bad cast node. If we would just compile, we would get an error. So what I would just do, I will just completely get rid of this whole thing, and then I will just compile and save. So now we are gone. The grab pistol, collapsed graph, or pickup pistol, you can completely delete now. You don't have this anymore, and this is completely fine. Yeah, next thing we should do, let's also, while we are here, get the event take damage. Just in case if you have not done it already, just collapse nodes, and we just call this one take damage. We always want to keep things clean. And then we do have the death event. This is also something we can leave in our character because this is not really inventory related. This is specifically related to our character. So of course, this is not something we should put into our actor component. It's perfectly fine to have it here to keep things organized. So I will just collapse nodes here as well. And this is just the death event. Now everything is a little more clean. And let's compile and save. So what we also should do, we should now open up our actor component. Let's open up our actor component. So the AC inventory, I should say. Sorry for that. And let me also just get this one, this slot occupied and the item slot. So I remember, I think I have it inside the add obtained items to grid, or was it add items to inventory? Yes, it was here. So when you open up the add items to inventory, you can just simply delete the item slot and also the slot occupied add function. You can just completely delete it because I don't think we're going to need it. And then just remove the item slot also. I was just trying to have like a counter, but it doesn't really make any sense for future purposes. So we can just delete everything here. And then you can, of course, delete the slot occupied map and also the item slot. We don't really need it. Compile and save. But then instead, what we should do, you go now to your third person character again. When you open the bools, you should now redefine or rename your has pistol, because now we equip the pistol, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we obtained the pistol. So we already obtaining the pistol, but that doesn't mean that we already equipping the pistol. I hope you get what I mean. So, but this boolean is set up to be already equipped because we're equipping it already automatically. Now things change. Now we have two states. We pick up the pistol, but it's not equipped. So the has pistol is functioning right now as the so-called equip pistol, or a pistol has been equipped. So we should now rename this one to pistol equipped. So rename the has pistol boolean to pistol equipped. And then we also need to swap out, next to our pistol equipped, we need to swap out our can aim. And this is what we should do now. So compile and save your BP third person, go to AC inventory. And what we should do now, like I said, you go to variables and you click on the plus and you make the same booleans. So can aim, because we want to use them inside our AC inventory. And we have now the pistol equipped. Because those booleans, they are more inventory related. We can only aim once we tell our inventory to equip the pistol, and also our pistol equipped is only true once we equip actually the pistol, our new BP pistol we are going to create soon. Yes, to be equipped, then only then it's going to be true. So this is all item related, and I want to keep all the logic, most of the logic here now for all this stuff. So in our AC inventory is much better. So what you can do now is we search here our can aim, right click, find references by name. And now you can click the first collapsed graph, which would be aim camera. You can just double click here. And then you will see we do have the can aim here. You might remember this. So let's just change this. It's pretty simple. You have the AC inventory here, just drag. And from here, from the AC, just get can aim. Sorry, not get. I mixed this one up. Set can aim. You get the set can aim, and you just copy another one and just hook this one up like so. Now you have two from your AC. The first one is false and the second one is true. So you can see it right here. Okay. So on finished it's true, and on false it's basically on update it's false. So we just control and drag this and put this guy here. And the true one, we put this guy here on the bottom. And then you just do that. This is also for the false boolean. And then you can just delete the existing ones and then just simply put those down here. And in this case, I don't mind. I just want to have things straight, so they just overlap. But for me, it's perfectly fine. And then I will just put this guy directly on top to save space. And now I can basically just proceed. If I search here inside this graph, we also have the pistol equipped. This is your has pistol. We just renamed this. So now you can also get your AC inventory here. And let's just set, no, in this case it's get pistol equipped. So we want to get this one. And then you can just basically put this guy here and delete the old one. And then just do queue this, and then also you can just queue that, and you might just want to straighten them a little bit vertically as well. Perfect. And then I believe we should also see we do have the get can aim set, so there must be another get can aim. Yes, I didn't see that actually, so of course we also have to update this. So we get can aim as well. And you put this guy also here, and just make sure that this is all now for the AC inventory. Okay, let me get this one like so. And then just queue this. And in this case, straighten. And And then I just want to align those vertically. Don't need to do that, it's just my thing. Compile and save. So this is everything for the can aim, obviously. So we replaced 3 of those bools, the 2 here, also the pistol equipped and also the can aim here. So this is perfectly fine. Now we can go to the pistol equipped, right click, find references by name. And now we see we also do have one get in the aim graph. We have another one, get pistol equipped in the aim camera. But this is something we already replaced, so no worries for that. And we do have something in the fire. So let's go into the aim. Let's double click here. And you can see here we have the get pistol equipped, and we just replace that. It's pretty simple. We don't really need to think a lot. We just need to step by step replace everything. So it's not really that horrible. And then let's just get this one instead. You just drag this one up and then just make sure that this is connected. The old one, of course, you can delete and just make sure everything's straight. And then let's just stack this one beneath. And then you should be good to go. Compile and save. Then we go to the next stage, aim camera. And we want to make sure that, just in case, but I believe we replaced everything. I think Unreal Engine is just a little too lazy to update. So I think we should be good to go. And then let's go to fire. And we do have the pistol equipped and also the is aiming, but the is aiming is something different, right? So we need to only replace the pistol equipped. So let's get the AC inventory. And let's get pistol equipped boolean. And we just put this inside here, delete the old one. And then let's just make sure that we have something like that. Good stuff. Now, another thing we need to do, we need to also go into our NMBP, as far as I can remember. Let's go to the characters, mannequin, anims, unarmed. Let's open up our animation, blueprint. And here, I believe, yes, here's the pistol equipped from our BP. And this makes sense if you just get our BP character, actor BP here. Just make more space. Get AC inventory. Let me just type in get AC inventory, the blue one here. Let me just align that, straighten the AC inventory, and from here I get pistol equipped. And then I can just right click on this new one, convert to branch, and then I will just control and swap this, control swap this to true. And then I can delete the old one and we just put it here. Compile, save. Okay, I think we should be good to go. Let me see if there is a boolean called has pistol, or I don't think so. No, we don't have any bools here we need to replace, so this is perfectly fine. I can actually sort things. So let me just get all the booleans here. And then actually, let me just organize a little bit here. So my floats should be on top. And then also my BP character maybe here on top. Just to organize a little more. You also feel free to also just make categories here, and then you can also just drag them into categories if you want to. Compile and save. Okay, and then we should be good to go. Let's just align them vertically here. Also those things, let's just align them vertically, and this one maybe, just to make it look a little better. Cleaning up and management is pretty important, otherwise you're gonna lose interest and it's demotivating. So always make things looking good and straight and keep things clean, organized. It's much more fun to work inside. Okay, then I believe this is everything for the swapping. So now we are feeding all from the AC inventory. Yes, and then we can later use this one, the pistol equipped and has can aim. We can use when we equip our pistol. We create our function. Okay, so we can close that one, the ABP. And before we close the BP third person character, let's just delete the can aim. And let's also delete the pistol equipped. And he's gonna tell us like, yeah, where pistol equipped is in use. Do you really want to delete it? This is normal. Let me just go to find by name. And he's still bragging about it, but you can see we are still, it has already been swapped. So this is perfectly fine. We can just delete the pistol equipped inside our BP third person character. Just delete, and then it's in use. It's not really in use, so let's just delete that. It's perfectly fine. And even though there might be something missing, from my experience, it's not. We can just update this one later. Okay, and then we can also close down the BP third person character, because now I want to create the first widget for the blinking effect, and then we can continue from there. When we open up our 12 inventory, we can go to widgets, and let's open up the hover, because we didn't touch it yet. So what we can do here, let me just check my values, just the scale and all that stuff, the aspect ratio for my image. Okay, cool. So what we need to do is basically, let's save that. What we need to do is, let's drag inside a canvas first. This is always something you need to have first. And then inside the canvas, we're going to use an image. So for our blinking effect, I just want to use an image. When I click on the image, let's call this one hover image. Let me just see how I was naming this. No, actually, sorry for that. It's called hover slot. This is what I named it previously. And then we can use this. So the anchor is top left. This stays as it is. And the size, I'd set it up 160 by 160, which is the exact same, just like we have for the current slot we already set up by default, our empty slots. This is just the top layer. Okay, so we have a top layer. And what I want to do is, we can just leave this image, but this is like really sharp and has like those sharp edges. And I think it doesn't look really appealing. So what we could do instead is we just get the empty slot again. Okay, but here instead, we just go and make the, let me see what I did. The color opacity, we set this completely pitch black. Okay, so we can't see the image anymore, but this is exactly what I want, because I just want to have the shape. I want to maintain the shape. Otherwise, it's going to look weird. And then you can now set the alpha also to 0. Okay. And then what we can do is, when we click on this hover slot, let's go to animations. Let's add an animation. We call this one hover anim. And then let's go here to the color opacity alpha. Let's double click here. Animations. Let's open up the alpha and let's do 0, which is fine. Let's just click and enter, and then you can do 0.25 is fine. And let's do 0.3. And then on 0.5, let's do 0 again. I believe I was using the same time frame. Yes, a little faster. So half a second, we have now basically this effect. If you want to have this a little stronger, feel free to go here in the center, and you might just want to put this to 0.5 if you want to just have it a little stronger. But I believe let's do 0.4 maybe. I had 0.3 previously, but maybe a tiny bit more is good. And then you're good to go, compile and save. What we need to do, we go to the graph, otherwise we can never really play our animation. And what we want to do is, we want to create an event. You can use it as a construct, yes, but I think we should use a custom event. It doesn't really matter. Because, yeah, performance-wise, it's not really going to make any difference. So we use the, if I can type, hover blink. Doesn't really matter. And then what you need, you get your hover anim or hover animation and just play animation. Pretty simple stuff. And then you set the nums to 0. So the num loops to play. Playback speed, I set this to 0.75 just to make this. No, wait, actually I set this to, let's keep it at 1. I think it's fine. Let's keep it at 1. But this is of course up to you. And I believe we should be good to go for this. There's nothing else we really need to do. Now we have an infinite blink. We can always trigger with this once we add this to our viewport. Now we are good to go here as for the hover, but I will just keep things open for now. Let's now go to the inventory slot. All right, so what we need to do for the inventory slot, we need to now get our WB hover. Just get this one and put this beneath our slot image. Not being a child, just here beneath our slot image. And again, we need to make sure that you type in here 160 by, not 16, 160 by 160. And make sure your anchor is by default top left. You don't really need to change it. And as for the opacity, it is already transparent because we set it to transparent by default here. Okay, by default you can see it is transparent, but it doesn't really matter because we play the animation and then it's going from being transparent to 0.4 in opacity and then back to 0. So it doesn't really matter. And this is just a preview. If you set this to the opacity to 1 or 0, it doesn't really make any sense, or it doesn't really make any difference. And also we might just want to change the is focusable later, but I will just see if we really gonna need that. Obviously the is focusable is something we might need later. So yeah, I might just want to go back later to the is focusable option, and we might just want to enable this later, but for now it's okay. The is focusable is only for us to make sure that depending on what kind of widget is now currently active or like has been added to our viewport currently, we could lose our tab button as an input, because when we want to just hide the inventory, but the inventory is not the latest widget being spawned, but the latest widget is then the slot, and then we have the hover. The hover is basically just completely overwriting everything, and then we lose our input basically. So what we have to do then, you need to click into your inventory and then you can only close it. So this is pretty annoying, and this is something we can later avoid by using is focusable, and then we can basically switch the focus, so we can set the focus back to our inventory. This is something we later will just fine tune, but for now let's just move on. So we have a little more things to do. What we need to do is for the inventory hover, when we go back here, let me just swap this. We need to also go to the graph, and then next to our blinking animation, what we want to do is we want to use the event construct. So let's just type in construct, event construct. For the event construct, what I want to do is I get the hover slot. Okay, this is the black picture we just added. And what we need to do is when we drag off of here, let's get the color and opacity. We need to set the color opacity. And on event construct, I want to have something like, let's say 0.3 and pitch black. Something like this. Okay, let's just drag and queue just to make it straight. As for the hover blink, it's a little stupid because it's much easier to just get the event on mouse enter. So once we enter this slot with our mouse, let's do on mouse enter. And we can just unhook this and swap this out. So we can just put this here. Let's do it like so. So the play animation you just set up. As for the hover blink here, you don't need that. The hover blink custom event, you can just delete this and get this one instead, the on mouse enter event. You can get those on the override functions. So they are already prepared for us, which is pretty cool. So this is where Unreal Engine is making it really easy for us. So then next step would be on mouse leave. So let's also get the on mouse leave, and let me also get this one here so it's a little more organized. So on mouse leave, what I will do, I will just copy this on mouse leave, because on mouse leave we want to set this back to our default, which is completely transparent. Sorry, it's completely white. We need to set this back to completely white, okay? So just make sure that you drag this all the way up. It's completely white, the alpha value, and then just hit OK. But the transparency is let's do 0.1. We can change it later. So for the final values, I was just thinking about it, how it makes sense, like the most sense. For the mouse enter, so let's just get a little more space here. Let's just get the event construct. So for the event construct, by default, I put this to 0 and pitch black. So now this is basically transparent, okay? So alpha is 0 and it's completely here pitch black, okay? Bam. Let's copy this, because now if we want to play the animation, we want to see the slot. So what we need to do for the hover animation here, we need to give it a little bit of color during the mouse enter. So once we enter, we should put this to 0.3. It's only the alpha here. Let's set this to 0.3. And once we leave, we set this back to completely pitch black and 0. So I think we only have a little bit of opacity, 0.3, once we enter. But for the construct and leave, you can just set this completely to alpha 0. And then you are basically good to go. And then just compile and save. let's try this one out at least. So what we need to do, before we try out the stuff, you can see here when you start trying it out and you start playing your game, he is gonna tell you you're gonna have a compiler error. It's pretty annoying. Yes, this is just for the AN pistol fire. It makes sense because you can see here the is aiming. This is pretty fine. We didn't touch is aiming. Okay, we only did the can aim, but this is perfectly fine. We didn't change anything here. But you can see the pistol equipped is now completely off. So what we need to do here, we need inside our AN pistol fire, our animation notify. We just, from here, we get our AC inventory again. It's always the same stuff. And then we just get from here the pistol equipped instead. Just to avoid the error, so just put this into the AND here on top. And then you can just get rid of the old one. And let me just straighten this, and then we just put it like so. Pretty simple stuff. And compile, save. And then he's gonna be like, yeah, but there's something still missing. We do have, you can see here, 2 pistols and the SM pistol. We don't have the BP pistol, so we can just delete this. And then he's still giving you an error because we need a pistol. He's gonna force us to say, hey, you wanna spawn this Niagara system. You wanna spawn this muzzle flash, right, on this socket on your pistol. You need to give me, please, you need to give me the mesh for that. You need to put something inside here. So what we will just simply do is we just unhook this, okay? We just unhook this for now. Let's compile and save, and we will come back later because we don't need the animation notify for now. Just make sure that you replace the pistol equipped, and just make sure that you disconnect the target for your socket location rotation, which would be your pistol, your blue pistol BP, and also the mesh, I believe, something attached to that. You can just delete this one. You don't need it because we deleted it anyway. We will replace this later. Okay, cool. So now we can just close this, and now when we are back here, okay, so this is what we try out. Let's just focus on our hover and blink effect. We wanna do things. So let's just try and see how this is gonna look. And now you can see we do have all the stuff available. Okay, pretty cool stuff. Later we also add sounds, but for now I think this looks quite fine. Pretty good stuff. Okay, so now I think we can move on further, but you can see here, this is always something really nice to see when we forget something. He's telling us, hey, this get value here. There's something we can't really process. So let's go to the BP unarmed and let's search the problem here. And he's gonna be like, hey, what is this? So the reason why he's doing that is because sometimes it's not valid. The AC inventory is not really valid when we are starting the game. It's only valid when we are basically picking up the pistol, otherwise can't read anything. So what we just want to do is we right click on the AC inventory, convert to validated get. And then we hook this one up instead. You can see here, this one goes into our bool, just control and swap this. And we start first checking if our AC inventory is valid. If our AC inventory is not valid, we are not doing anything here. And then he's just checking this whole route only when our AC inventory is valid. And if not, he's just skipping this, aiming, and basically the aim offset, because we can't use it anyway. We only need to, the only time we can fire this off and check this is when we have obtained our pistol and we equip it. And then we can only do this stuff. Otherwise, we can never fire this. So when we are not picking up the pistol, we are not dealing with this, then we can always skip this whole line and we still can be injured and we still can be dead. Okay, so this is perfectly fine for us. Just make sure that you hook this is valid in front. And then when you start the game, run around a little bit and open the inventory and just close, open again, you see you don't have any errors anymore because he's just avoiding completely the AC inventory in that state because it's not valid. Let's now start with the AC inventory logic. So let's open up our AC inventory. And as for the ABP unarmed, I will just close this. I will also just close the hover for now and also the slot just to save a little bit of performance, but we might just want to open this one up later. So for the AC inventory, we also need to open up the inventory widget, the so-called inventory slot. So those two things are pretty important now. We need to go into the graph, into our inventory slot. We can just get rid of these event tick and all that stuff. And what we have to do now, first, we need to get a variable here, otherwise we cannot read our inventory slots once we click that. So we need to have a reference and we need to expose this on spawn. So let's go and get the BP master item. You get the BP master item as a class reference, otherwise we cannot really connect that, and type in the clicked item. So this makes more sense for you to understand. So once we click inside our item or inside the inventory on a specific item, we really want to know, is this might be a green herb when we right click and we want to spawn buttons. Maybe we want to have an equip button and stuff like this, or a combine, heal, unlock, scrap, inspect. So we want to have different buttons. But of course we need to know first what kind of item sits in what slot. And this is the reason why we need to have this one, and we need to instance is editable, and we need to expose this in spawn. And let's compile and save. And then when we go back to our AC inventory, we do have a function called add obtained items to grid. And now when you refresh this inventory slot creation, you can just go here and refresh nodes. Now we have this clicked item here, and you can just hook up this looped thing. So this means every single time we add something in our inventory, so every single time we add something when we pick something up, this is looping, or this will loop the whole inventory every single time, depending on how many things we picked up. So we pick up one, we have an index of 1, which would be index 0. You pick up 2 things, you're going to have an index of 0 and 1. You pick up 3 things, he's going to loop 0, 1, and 2. So he's always looping the same amount of like how many times we pick something up. And he's always giving, for each number, he's giving us what kind of item it is. And we want to put this into our inventory slot. Now it's being fed into the inventory slot. We can compile this and save. And now when we are inside our BPI slot, we have now every single time we open up our inventory and we click on a specific slot, he's giving us the exact item, currently where the item is sitting in what kind of slot. This is pretty important, otherwise it's not going to work. So what we want to do, we want to avoid firing of logic. What we just want to do is, we just want to get an override function. For example, let's get the on mouse button down in our inventory slot, on mouse button down. And then we can just do this one here. And like I said, I try to avoid a lot of logic here. I just want to get the essential thing. So let's do is mouse button down. And let's just left click and then right click. So just to get this right, mouse button is down. And then you can just, of course, hook this one up with a branch. And just to make sure that everything's clean. And let's queue this. And then what you can do is you can get this one here, drag off, and just make sure that this is handled for now. We really want to avoid having logic inside our widget. So this is why we keep things fairly clean here. And we only have to check if we are pressing the button or not. And we just want to make sure if this is being handled or not. Okay, this is also pretty important. I want to keep things fairly clean. So this means that I'm only checking if I'm pressing the mouse button or not. And I just want to make sure if this is being handled or not. Nothing else. All the logic here, we will just cast this from our AC and we will just fire it off from here. So we want to keep things organized and clean. The reason why we are telling this guy to make this handled, or that this event is being handled, is simply because when you hover over this, he's telling you this event is bubbled. As far as I understand, this means when you click a button, he can fire it for like frame 1, 2, 3, 4. He's firing it several times, even though you just click once, but you press a lot slower than compared to 30 frames per second or 60 frames per second. So this means when you click something, he can fire it maybe 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. And this is something we really want to avoid, and this is the reason why we need to have this being handled. Once it's being handled, then he's preventing it from being this event being bubbled, basically. So this is what I understand. Okay, so let's now just compile and save, and we will get back to this later. So let's try to build this logic. Let me just check my current project here, just in case, if I don't forget anything. What we want to do is, let's close down the add item to inventory, or add obtained items, we don't need that. And let's now just create a new function here, so we don't really need an event. Just keep things clean, event is fair, and a function is perfectly fine. And let's do show buttons first, and then we can later equip. So first we want to make sure that we can show buttons. And what we want to do is, we want to get the WB inventory buttons, so we don't have it here already. So what we can do is, let's just create a widget instead. We can also just do that, and then just get the buttons. Okay, first of all, we get the buttons, right click and promote to a variable first. and then you just call this one WB inventory buttons. So now we have also a connection once you create this. But what I want to do is I want to get now the inventory buttons, okay, and then right click, convert to validated get, because I want to make sure that this is only fired or only being triggered if this is not valid. So when it's not valid, we can basically create this event, or this, not this event, but this widget. So we can see our buttons later. But in just in case, if this is valid, we can just drag off of here and remove from parent. So let me just get a little more space, and then you can see, okay, let's remove this from parent when this is valid, and then boom, just hook it up also, okay? We always want to make sure that this will be created. Once it has been created, it is valid, we will make sure that we remove the existing one, otherwise you're going to have overlapping stuff, a lot of overlapping buttons, and this is horrible. For the function itself, we also might just want to have an input, pretty important, and this would be the BP master item. So the BP master item as a class, a reference, and this is also the clicked item. So now we do have a connection. So basically, just for you to understand, you remember when we start picking up items, so add item to inventory, we realize, let me just close this, add obtained items to grid, sorry. So when we pick something up, the next step we firing off would be the add obtained items to grid. So we loop through the whole items we just picked up. This will always be the last one, but we are looping this every single time we pick something up. So this means that our slot widget will always save everything depending on where our item sits in what kind of slot. So now we get this information every single time we pick something up, okay? And then we can go to the inventory slot. So when we press a button, we have now the clicked item here. This is now being fed once we open our inventory and we picked something up. This has now data because it gets fed before we actually use our buttons to actually interact with our picked up items. So we do know that we always gonna have items. So this would be the first step, and then the next step would be we spawn our inventory buttons, and then from here this is connected, and then we can basically now, when we have this here, work with our function called show buttons, and we can basically just use those buttons from here. Pretty cool stuff. So from here, let's just get class defaults. Okay, let's get class defaults, because what I want to do is I want to make sure that I get the item type. So depending on what kind of slot I get, depending on what kind of slot I click, I really want to make sure that I do know if it's a pistol, a herb, a key, a revolver, bullets, stuff like that. Okay, but before we use this one, we need some more stuff before that, and this is, for example, when you drag off of here, the set position in viewport. We want to set our position in viewport for this specific button we want to spawn with our right mouse button. We do have a position here. You can just right click and split struct pin, because we need the X and Y instead and not the vector 2D. And now when you get also your buttons, your inventory buttons, okay, this is now valid because we create our buttons here. So after this has been created and set, we can now from here get the player controller, but I think it makes sense to get player controller first. Sorry for that. So let's go and get the player controller first. And then we want to drag off of here and we get mouse position. We want to get the mouse position. And we don't really need the W inventory buttons, because I just realized we can just hook this one up like so. So we really don't need the target, we have it already. And then you can get the X, which would be X, and Y would be Y. So this means that this inventory button is now being spawned depending on where our mouse position is right now. This is a lot better. So if we are not using this, our buttons will spawn on the top left, and this is pretty annoying because we told them by default that our buttons will always be anchored on the top left, but once we click on an item, our buttons will always spawn directly on top of our mouse, and this is pretty handy. So now finally we can now actually use the item type. So what I want to do is, for the buttons, let's get the button reference again, and we want to make sure that we set visibility We want to set the visibility first for the whole blueprint. So for the whole widget, we want to keep this being visible. So now we set the whole widget to visible. Okay, by default it is still visible, but then we will just copy this. Okay, and this would be for our buttons. So now we can later define what kind of buttons we want to make appear, what kind of buttons we want to make pop out, and what kind of buttons stay collapsed, because we want to stay organized. So for the pistol, it's only equip and reload, for example, and inspect. But for different items, we're going to have like a heal button, or like we have different commands. And this is what we want to do. Let me save. And so before we can change this, so before we can actually before we can finish this function, okay, this one here, we need to set up buttons actually. So why don't we just compile here and just leave this unhooked because we don't have buttons yet. Let's just compile and save again. We need to go into our buttons, okay, and now let's start implementing or creating some buttons. So first of all, I need a so-called canvas. Again, drag it inside. And then what we need in this case would be a vertical box. This is pretty important. And we put the vertical box also inside the canvas. As for the vertical box, you just leave the anchor here on top left. This is perfectly fine. But for the X and Y, you put this to 160 because this is the same dimension we have for our slot. Okay, so this is a lot cleaner to have the same size. But for the Y, we should do a lot more. Let's double it up to a 320 because we want to spawn maybe more buttons. So we just want to keep things. We just want to make sure that we have enough space, basically. And then we can start by getting a button. Okay, so let's just get a button, put this into the vertical box, this one. And we want to start by getting this button. We call this one use button. The use button, let's put the background color here to completely alpha 0. We just want to make sure that everything here is completely 0, also the RGB, so basically everything. So now this is completely transparent because what we're going to use would be an image. And also we want to make sure that for every button we just copy later, we want to make sure that this one is focusable. So this is by default, this is perfect. We need that, and the visibility needs to be collapsed, not hidden, but collapsed. This just means that when we don't need the healing button for the pistol, we don't need the reload button for the green herb, so we need a lot of buttons, like a lot of buttons we don't really need for specific items. But on the other hand, for other different types of items, we need them. This means if you just set this to hidden by default, this means like when you right click and you want to spawn your buttons, then you're going to have gaps. So the first one would be visible, the second one would be invisible, and then you're going to have gaps. And this is horrible, but collapsed means it's basically hidden, but he's just collapsing it down, so you will never have any gaps. For the use button, let's get an image. Okay, let's just get an image, drag this also inside the use button, and we call this one use button IMG, because I want to know what kind of button it is, and I want to know that this one is definitely the image. This is pretty important to distinguish. And as for the use button image, okay, when you click on that, you want to make sure that you open up the brush appearance and you get now the so-called use. Just type in use, and then you're going to have something like render full. So you can use this one. This would be the pause icon. The second one in my case is the use icon. And then you want to open up the image size, and let's put this to 256 by 32. And now if I zoom in, you're going to have something like that. And as for the button itself, let's just go back here and let's change the opacity to something like 0.4, so just to make this a little darker. So I think completely transparent is a little weird. Let's just put this RGB to 0, but alpha should be 0.4, but this is up to you. You can also just set this one to 0.5 just to make this a little darker. But I believe, 0.5 is perfect. Let's just do it for now. But this is completely up to you. Now what you need to do, once you made sure that this is collapsed, the visibility for your button, and you also made sure that this is focusable, okay, and everything looks nice, then you can just copy this button, just click on the button itself, it's already enough, and then just Control D, and then you can already change the second button. We have all the same settings, you don't need to do anything else here. So instead of having a use button, why don't we just get, for example, the reload button? Let's get the reload button. And then as for the use button, we call this one reload button image. and then just get the reload. Just type in reload and get the render full, which would be 256 by 32, and then you will already be good to go. Also, make sure that the image here, that you set this to fill horizontally and fill vertically, just to make sure that you stretch this one out. And feel free to also get the padding on the use button image and put the padding to something like 0, and also the reload button, let's just put this to 0 also completely. You can also just open up the padding and define top, left, right, bottom, but I will just keep things at 0 for everything, just to stretch it out as much as possible. And then you can just Control D the reload button. And the next button, for example, would be, let's say, inspect button, which would be then the inspect button IMG. And we get the inspect render full. And this is 256, so this is pretty repetitive. Just now put all the buttons you might just want to have in your game. You can now go crazy here. I also have the combine button. So for combine herbal items, combine button, and then F2 combine button IMG. And then you only need to swap the image because everything else is already set up. This one would be combine, the render full, and this one would be 256 by 32, and then just Control D this one, and you want to make sure that you press F2 here, and you get maybe the scrap button, which would be then down here, the scrap button IMG, and of course you get the scrap render full 256 by 32. And then Control D, so we are almost done. I just want to add maybe one more thing, or let's do equip button. And this one would be, of course, the equip button IMG. And change the image, equip render full 256 by 32. And Control D, and let's do unequip. And then we can always come back later if we just maybe want to have also the heal button, but I think I will just use the use button instead. We can also get the unlock, but why don't we just keep the use button for those things, and then unequip. If you want to really have this specific, feel free to always add more buttons. Unequip button IMG, compile and save. So now we should also, of course, swap this image. So unequip full, yes, 256 by 32. And compile and save. Okay, cool. Now we can go back to the inventory slot and we can put our function inside here. Before we do that, we need to finish this one. I just want to give you an example for now. Okay, so we start by equipping the pistol. So what we want to do is we get the buttons here again. So first we make them visible because they are all collapsed. But the widget itself is being visible by default now, once we fire this off. And then from here you can get the button. Just type in button, and you want to make sure that you get the equip button. Just get the equip button here. I believe this must be correct as far as I can remember. And then we put this into the target. And later, if you want to add reload and different buttons, you just can get them here. Just get all the buttons you need, and then you can all just hook this one up into the visibility at the same time. You don't need a lot of visibility nodes. You can just hook several buttons into this one. And then we just hook this one up like so. But one more thing for this function, to be more specific, you remember that we have the clicked item. So we want to know what on what kind of item we click. So we need to put this one in advance. Let's just make some space, because now from here we get the item type. So let's just type in switch on e item type, and we want to make sure that we hook this one up in between. And we only want to use the pistol for now. Only the pistol is now going to work. And then let's just get this one like so. And maybe we put this guy here. Pretty sweet. So for now we are just focusing on our pistol, step by step, because we want to do all the functions first and try if this is working out. So now we have this whole function show buttons, right? We can now get this show buttons function. So in our inventory slot, we prepared this stuff here. So once we click the right mouse button on our inventory slot, so when our inventory slot is valid, when this has been added to our viewport, Then we want to make sure that we get, in this case now, get owning player pawn. Let's get the owning player pawn. From here, get AC inventory. Sorry, I forgot something. Of course, we need to get the component by class first, otherwise you can't find it. So get component by class, and then AC inventory. And then from here, let's do button, show buttons, the function. And if this is true, so once we click the mouse button, right mouse button, yes, please fire this and then make sure that this is being handled. And for the clicked item, you now need to get this clicked item because we want to know what kind of item we click. So please connect this one we just get. Because as I told you before, this has data because we feed the data with the add item to grid, right? I will show you again, obtained items to grid. You can see here every single time we pick something up, this is being fired in the background. After the item has been added to our array, we can then loop this array because now this has data, and then he's looping through the whole stuff. So this means we constantly, after each pickup, we're firing off the item we just picked up. Okay, and then this is our inventory slot widget, and this means that now this stuff here, this one, has now data. And we are just pushing it to the next widget, which would be, in this case, the button. Okay, so when we go back to our AC, just compile. When we go back to our AC and we show buttons, now we spawn the button widget, in this case the equip. And then we do know here, this is our input for our show buttons, our input. We do know here from this route, you can see here, this is the input. We have now the right item. Every single time we click on different slots. So before we can actually do things, let's just get the pistol here. Okay. And let's press play. And let's get this one. Another thing we need to do before we can test things out, we want to make sure that our inventory is working properly. So why don't we just get the override on a key down? So let me just search for that on key down here. And just make sure that you set this one here, and you want to make sure that this is being handled once we're done. Because also from here, I just want to get owning player pawn, because once we spawn more widgets inside our inventory, we spawn the buttons and all that stuff, we lose our input and we can save ourselves a lot of headache. And why don't we just get also here the component by class, okay? And we get the AC inventory here. And from here, we can fire also the hide inventory right away from our slot. So then we can always make sure that we completely destroying our inventory, no matter what is being spawned on top. Otherwise, it would be quite tedious. You cannot right away close the item once you have the slot being spawned. When the spot is in focus, you always have to click and then you can close this one because you have to click to set the focus back to the inventory. This is pretty annoying. So we can just, why don't we just hide the inventory from our slot and then we are good to go. Next thing we need to do, we need to go to our inventory buttons. Okay, then let's go to our designer. We want to start by using only the equip button. So when you click on this specific button, when we start with this, we want to get this on clicked here, this event. And this is actually pretty good. Let me just delete the default ones. Once you click, you can now also get from the AC a reference. So again, let's get the owning player pawn. From here, component by class. Let's get the AC. And now from here, we can basically fire off another event, because when we click the equip button, we will now spawn. We want to equip the new actor BP, the pistol, and then we can also update our animation notify. So in order to do this and fire this off, to keep things really clean and have no logic here inside, we need to now get another function. So let's again go to our AC inventory, and let's click on the plus, and let's do equip pistol, because this is now the function where we spawn and then attach our pistol. So first we should spawn an actor from class, because we are using a class. So this means we can now get the BP pistol, this guy here. So we deleted our previous one, okay? So you only have now the pistol here you just created in the previous lecture. You realize that we just create a child. This is the one, okay? You might just wanna, I think it's not possible, but you can just get the class. Just type in BP pistol and make sure that you delete the previous one we had already before. So this is now your child of your master item, okay? And then for the spawn transform, make sure that you right click here and promote this one to a variable. and you just call this one pistol transform. This is just for us to avoid errors, so we can just feed this. It doesn't really, it's not really something we're gonna use. And then you can just promote this one to a variable, and you call this one the BP pistol. Now you do have the pistol as a reference here also, which is pretty cool. And from here, you want to make sure that you set, first of all, let's get the pickup collision. I think it was called pickup collision, right? So this is the collision for the master item. It's down here. I don't know why this is so hard to find. Get pickup collision. And then all the way down, and just get the blue one here all the way down. Get collision under default variables. And then you can, from here, set collision enabled. And the set collision enabled is no collision. Otherwise, when you don't do that, the problem is you can, once you attach your pistol, you can still pick it up. Because your pistol is attached and spawned, and you do have the pickup collision enabled. And then you will always, all the time, collide with your weapon. You can just spam infinite amount of times the equip button. And not really the equip button, it's disabled, but because we're only using the inventory, but still you will always have the possibility to see the pickup text, and this is pretty annoying. Then we get player character, in this case, to get the player character. From there, you can get the mesh, just get the mesh down here. And once you have the mesh, you can now attach actor to component. And the target then would be your reference, your pistol we just spawned as an instance reference, and then just hook up the collision also here. And just make sure that everything is nice and tidy. Let's just set it up like so. Sweet. The socket name, you might remember, we still have a socket for our mesh. So this one was weapon, it didn't change, okay? And location rule would be snap to target, is snap to target, and snap to target, also pretty necessary. Now we can get the pistol equipped, set this one. So now you can set this here to true. So once this fires, we do know that this is now true. And you can just follow along with the set can aim, and you also set this one to true, like so. You can play a sound, so why don't you just get the play sound at location? And in this case, you can get also, if you want to, the player pawn. So you just get the player pawn and then drag off of here, and you get the actor location. And then from here, just put this into the location, and then just get the pickup we just migrated. Pickup queue, and then you will be good to go. You can now connect this one also, and then you're basically pretty much done for the equip function. Compile and save. And now we can go back to the buttons. Let's just go back to the buttons, and from here you just get the equip pistol function. Okay, just get this one, and then after that just remove from parent, because once you click on equip, you want to make sure that you remove this one, which is self target. So we are just removing this particular button, or the buttons basically. Compile and save. So let me just debug a little bit, because I can't really get the button. So there's a mistake anywhere. So let me just find the mistake here. So let me just print in my slot. So once I click the right mouse button, I just want to make sure that this is true. Must be true. So why don't we just get this one? Maybe the slot is not active, but here it is active once I click. And also here it is active, but I can't really find. He's now telling us, yeah, you can't. I can't find the show button because of the item type, which is the class. I can't find the item class, but this is normal because we were clicking once into an empty space. This is pretty normal, so we need to fix this thing first. So the reason why the show buttons is not going to work must be because inside this function show buttons, there's something missing. let's print here after we create the buttons. Let's print string this one. Let's get the display name of our inventory buttons widget, and let's try. We have the reference. Okay, I believe the reason, so we do have this one, but still it seems he can't find the item type. And when he can't really find the item, he doesn't really know that he needs to drag this one. This is the reason why that is. So let me just get this and let me print the pistol just to make sure. And also I just want to have the name, the item type also. Just let me see if this is correct, but I believe he can't find the item apparently. Just pick it up. He can find the item. So this is also correct. And we do have the inventory buttons. Yes, we set this one, so this is also fine. Set the visibility, so we might just wanna... Yes, of course he's not gonna find it because I'm stupid and I forgot something really, really important. Here, get space after the create widget. Here after the buttons. Of course, add to viewport. This makes sense. I was just forgetting that. Sorry for this. You might have already guessed that, to be honest. I was just forgetting things. And then once we add this to viewport, we can try and test it out. Now we got the equip button. And now you can basically click it. And we do have the wrong sound, sorry for that. Of course we need also another sound. Let's go back to the equip button. Doesn't make any sense to pick up this stuff. We want to get the, like any type of pistol sound cue. Maybe this. This one here, let's just get this one as a sound. And also the snap to target is not really gonna work. Okay, I can see the pistol, but it's not snapping. I assume I have a different socket name for that, apparently. So in my own project, I have a different one. So let me just go to the third person. Yes, I think we're gonna have a different socket name for this. So let's just go to the skeleton. And this one is not weapon, apparently. It is, let's see, hand R. Where is hand R? Must be here anywhere. Okay, so apparently, yes, it's the pistol. Sorry for that. In my previous project, I called this one weapon. So, but now this is pistol, is making more sense. So we just get the pistol. So this is based off of your name you put as a socket in your skeleton mesh. Okay, so this is pistol, and then it's gonna be attached to our hand. So we can pick it up. We can hover over here and do equip. And sorry for that. I told you this is pretty weird and doesn't make any sense what I did here. Of course, when you go back to your BP pistol, okay, make sure your location here is set to 0. Okay, this was a little stupid in my previous lecture. I wasn't thinking about that when we just attached this. Of course, it's being completely displaced. So make sure that the location is completely set to 0, 0, and 0. Your rotation also, everything is 0. You don't want to change anything here. And your scale is 1 and 1 and 1. Okay, just make sure that this one is correct. And then when you go back to your AC inventory, make sure that you set this one to do not spawn. Multiply scale with root component scale is fine. And then you should be good to go. Snap to target and find the right socket name. Get your player character from there, get your mesh, and this one would be the parent. And the pistol itself, after you hook this one up from the return value here, this one will then be your target. And make sure also from the pistol, your pickup collision is also the target for the set collision area to no collision, and then you will be good to go. But this is already the stuff I explained to you. So let's just try, and now it should work. So yeah, you can just place it in the scene better, but once you hook this one up, and once you pick this up, you can now equip this one. The button is gone, and then boom, you are good to go. And one thing we need to do is we go to the anim now, if you remember. Let's go back to the anim notify. So our anim notify folder, let's go to the AN pistol fire. And now what we can do here, pretty cool stuff. We have now set up the AC inventory from the AC inventory. You get the pistol equipped now. And then if this is true, so we are aiming and pistol is equipped, we can then now from the player character, let me just think, no, from the AC inventory, we can now get the BP pistol. And from our BP pistol, this contains a mesh, so get the mesh. See, get the static mesh, to be more specific. And from the static mesh, you can now put this into the target, and here also into the target. And if this is true, you can now spawn the Niagara and also the sound, compile and save. And once you try this out, let's just hook this one up, pick this one up, sorry, and then equip. And now let's just compile a little bit. And you are back on track. Pretty good stuff. Now we are basically done, and I'm already almost 2 hours in, but we still need to do some debugging because there's still, let me just put this one here, and this is bothering me. So when we hook this one up, when we pick this one up, you can see that this is now blinking and blinking and blinking. This is because this is good, but once we leave, he's still blinking with the empty one. So this means what we need to do, we need to delete once we pick up basically, we need to delete the empty slot. So let me find where I did that. Add obtained items to grid, and when we, no, I believe it was add item to inventory. Let me search for that. Yeah, I'm sorry for that. You need to go to your WB inventory hover, and let's put this down a little bit. You need to, of course, makes sense, drag off of here, or just get the hover animation, makes more sense. And then you want to make sure that you stop the animation. Otherwise, he will just continue to do that. Just stop the animation. And then you can see, boom, now you're good to go. So he was always playing the whole animation all the time. So of course, you want to make sure that he's stopping the animation. So now this is basically transparent, and every single time we hover over each slot, it doesn't really matter if it's an empty slot or if it's an occupied slot, he will always fire like this alpha channel 0 to 0.4, 0 to 0.4, and we need to stop the animation once we stop, or like when we leave on mouse leave. So this is the reason. Okay, so now everything works, almost. Let me just see if I click an empty space. We still have a problem here. So, but now, when we go and get our pistol, we can now right click here, equip. The button is gone, and we can right away, okay, there's still one mistake here. We need to fix on how to get out of our inventory, because we have to do more, we have to press the tab button twice, or we have to click with our mouse. It's pretty annoying. So we also have to make this more fluent. So when we go to our function called setGameToUI, you can see the WB inventory here. We need to switch this to now the WB hover, because this is basically like our next layer we do have. So we can now create this variable. So just type in WB, how's it called? Let's just keep this as it is, in WB inventory hover, and just search for the WB hover, this one, object reference. Let's just sort things so all the WBs are sorted, and just get the hover here and hook this one up like so. And now you can see when I open up the inventory, I can just open, close, just pressing once. So this is fixed. And also I can just open this, I can just pick up the pistol, go here, and then I still can close it right away. And also I can just right click, close it. This is just one tiny bug we can fix. But when I go back right away, I can just right click here, equip, and then we are good to go. But yeah, it's just one tiny bug. If you just click and then close the inventory, then it's not gonna vanish. But this is something you can do, pretty simple. You go to the hide inventory. So this is when we toggle back to our game. So when the WP inventory is valid, yes, it is. You can also get the button if you want to, not set. You can also get the button, this one, and you can also remove this one, like so. You don't need to have several nodes, you can just connect this one up. And then you should be able to, when you close the inventory, you can see it's now gone. And one last thing we should do, it's already a really long lecture, yes, but one last thing we should do is we should prevent the inventory from doing this, empty slots. So what we can, this is the reason why, because he's not finding the item in an empty slot. So this is the reason. So we could do, in the show buttons, we can set up a so-called is valid class. Is it a valid class? And if it is, we can, let me just think where we can put it. Yeah, here. So what we should do, let's put this right in the beginning. Why not? Let's just put it here. So we want to make sure that we get the isValid class. Let's do it from here, isValid class. So if this is none in an empty slot, there is nothing. It's empty. We didn't pick anything up, so there can't be any item. And then only if it's true, then we do that. Otherwise, we can't show any buttons. And then he's going to proceed with the inventory buttons being valid. If yes, just remove it first, remove the existing one, and then just create another one. Or if it's not valid, please just go ahead and create one instead anyway. So when we just go back, clear this mess, we should be good to go. We can spam all the time. And we can just go back. And you can see we still have tiny error here, remove from parent in the hide inventory. You can't access that because we also need an isValid. So just right click and promote this or convert this to a validated get and just do stuff like this. And if it's valid, remove this from parent, and also if this is valid, remove this from parent. Otherwise, he will try to remove it even though it's not valid. And then he's like, and then this is the reason why he's moaning about that. If it's not valid, you can't. If it's not valid, he can't remove it from the parent. Logically. So then I can click all the things. And one more thing we need to do. Let me just rebuild this a tiny bit, because now, unfortunately, we need to have this one like so. First, we need to remove this one. Sorry for that. First, we need to remove this one, the button. If the button is valid, we remove this. And then we remove this one. And when the buttons are not valid, you just skip the remove. Okay, because you want to proceed, maybe you're not spawning the buttons, so when you're not pressing right click but your inventory is open, so it's not valid, you just want to avoid the remove from parent, yes, but still you want to keep things organized here, so you just, so still you want to make sure if this is valid, the inventory, which will always be valid in this case, and then please hook this one up as well. Then you can see I can now click everything and I can just go back out right away, just pressing once. And I can just click and click and click and click and all the time. I can spam the buttons all the time. And I can just go out right away. And nothing is being spawned, but only time when I have the pistol. And I can also just spam the button here. I will only have one. And I can just click here, nothing is gonna happen. And then I can just equip it right away. And I can just go out, I can go out right away also. And we don't have any errors. Perfect. Okay, just a quick heads up, one minor bug, or not really minor bug, a really annoying bug. I need to tell you here, I just forgot to tell you, when we go also to the AC inventory, we just did this stuff here, right? So we want to make sure that the remove from parent is, if it's valid, we remove the buttons when they are spawned, when they're being spawned. If not, we just want to proceed anyway. If they're not valid, we still want to make sure that the inventory, if the inventory is valid, we remove it as well. The problem is, once we do that, we still maintain value here, so it will still be valid. We just remove this from parent, but this doesn't mean that this is invalid anymore. This is still in the background valid. We only remove the viewport, basically. So when this is still valid in the background, when we go to our show inventory, and you go out, let's go back to the event graph, you can see that we put this guy here to a flip-flop. And this is something we need to change. So what I did in my project is to make this much cleaner, more secure. Instead of having a flip-flop, I just get the WB inventory, get this one, right-click, convert to a validated get, and connect this one like so. So if this is valid, we want to hide, makes sense. But if it's not valid, we of course want to spawn our inventory. We want to show this inventory in our viewport. We are done almost, but we need to go to our show inventory again. So make sure that you have this. So if the inventory is valid, we don't do that. We do hide the inventory. Okay. So let me just go into the hide now. And when we hide also our inventory, we need to make sure, like I said before, that we also get the W inventory and we set this one, not get, set. We set this one to none. So this way, when this is not connected, this way we set this to none. This means that every single time we go back now, this will not be valid anymore. So every time we hide our inventory, we always make sure that our WB inventory is getting nulled or is being set to none. So then every single time we do know that if this is not valid, we will always show the inventory. And then you will be good to go. Let's see. You can now just spam the button here all the time. And I can click again in every single slot several times. Doesn't really matter. Nothing is going to show up because it's empty. It's not a valid class. And then I can just go right away. I can go out. But I can pick up a weapon. And then once I did that, he's now getting the slot. And he's like, yes, cool. And then boom, we can just equip the pistol. And we are good to go. And we can just close it right away. There's one more thing I would like to show you. This is just visually, so this is not something you need to do, but I did it in my project and I think this is pretty good to know. When you go in your inventory, let's go to widgets, let's go to buttons, let's go to graph, and then you do have the, we do use the equip button, right? So let's go back to designer. When you click on the equip button, so you can do this for every single button. You scroll down and you have also next to clicked where we equip our weapon, we also get the hovered, and also we want to get the unhovered button. So now we can also define for this button here some blinking stuff. This means we can get the equip button image, get this one, set color and opacity. And when I hover, I just want to make sure this is 0.25. Let's see, 0.25 and completely pitch black. So when I basically hover over this button, I want to have this pitch black and an opacity of 0.25. But then when I just leave, I set this back to default, which would be then completely white. So just make this completely white. Everything's like set to 1. Okay. So this is for the image, the equip button. And then I think this should be the right order. So now you can see, I can just now, I have now this blinking effect. If this is too strong and just too dark, feel free to always go unhovered. And you might just want to put this to white instead. Makes more sense for me. And let's see, just have 25% of opacity basically. And now you can see you have this. But this is up to you. Maybe let's also do 0.4 on hovered. And this is something you can do for every single button, of course, later. Yeah, I think this is better. So it's gonna look better when you have equip, reload, and also inspect, and then you're gonna have 3 different buttons, for example, for the pistol, and then yes. Cool, so yeah, this is it.